Thank you so much, Herb. Morning, everybody. Wow, TEDxManchester got a bit bigger since I was here last year. Well, it is my first job as mayor, officially, to welcome you all to Manchester, a place so warm, so welcoming, so open-minded, that they even went and elected somebody born in Liverpool as their first elected mayor. What can I say about them? The home, of course, of 24-hour party people. Looking out into the audience, I'm picking up a few faces. Tell me that tradition is alive and well in Manchester. I'm glad it is. A radical city where through the decades, the centuries, people have thought big thoughts and changed the world. So this is the right place for us to be meeting. And actually, it's the most fitting of weeks to be doing so. A week when we have celebrated a Manchester girl, name of Emmeline Pankhurst, from the streets of Moss Side, who led a suffragette city with sisterhood pride. They're not my words, I wish they were, but the words of Tony Walsh, the great Tony Walsh. And I'm going to quote to you now another Tony. This one said this: "Here it rains and rains, and yet we managed to produce the Industrial Revolution, the trade union movement, the Communist Manifesto, and even the goddamn computer. Down south, where the sun never sets, you took all our money, and what did you produce? Chaz and Dave." Somebody should definitely erect a statue to Tony Wilson somewhere in this city. I'm absolutely certain of that. My favourite Manchester story is the one that lies behind a statue just a couple of streets from here. A statue of Abraham Lincoln in Lincoln Square. And you might wonder, why does Manchester have a statue of Abraham Lincoln? Well, let me tell you, it goes back to 1862, the height of the American Civil War, where the breakaway southern states, the cotton states, where slavery was rife, where they were breaking away from the Union, and Lincoln was trying to hold the country together. Now, this caused chaos everywhere, all over the world, as people wondered what to do. But here, more so than anywhere. Why? Because then, at that moment in time, Manchester, Lancashire, was the cotton capital of the world. And the problem was, the blockade of the southern states meant that the cotton wasn't coming through. So the mills were dark, people didn't have work, families didn't have food. So they were stuck, they didn't know what to do. But they knew that the cause was an important one. And in 1862, just a couple of buildings from here at the Free Trade Hall, there was a meeting of the working men of Manchester. And they took a vote that night about what they should do. And they resolved that they would not handle slave-picked cotton. And in doing so, in taking that stand, they helped bring an end to the American Civil War. And it led Lincoln to praise what he called their act of sublime Christian heroism, which hasn't been surpassed in any age or in any country. Manchester, what a place, what people that we have here in this city. Humanity, compassion, solidarity. These are the enduring values of Manchester, and we saw them come through again last year, when, as Herb said, tragedy struck. But the people of Manchester weren't going to let the terrorists spread hate and division. They came together. They stood together in that amazing Manchester tradition. I couldn't have been more proud of this place, and I couldn't be more proud of somebody who epitomizes it so well, who you'll hear from later today. Dan Hett. Dan, who lost his brother, Martin, in the attack. Dan who has been out on the streets of Manchester and stood up to far-right extremists who have come here and tried to exploit his family's tragedy and that of 21 others. Dan, we salute you. We are proud of you. All of Manchester is proud of you. It's people like Dan, it's places like Manchester, I hope, that are giving people a sense of optimism in what feels like a very, very dark world at times at the moment. Let me just develop that theme that Herb was touching on, my analysis of what's gone wrong with politics. We are living through a crisis in democracy. Why is that happening? I think it's happening because the world is now changing so fast. And politics, the old political structures, can't respond, can't make sense of it. We have a situation where global companies have got bigger than governments. So they call the shots. They set the rules about what tax they're going to pay, what working conditions they're going to inflict on their employees. It's why modern work seems to resemble the 19th century. We've got a political system where power is in the hands of too few people. And if you think about it, think of our own system in Westminster. Half of it, the Commons, has a whip system where people can't necessarily do what they want to, what they think is right. They're just told to vote with the party line. The other half of it isn't even elected. And it's making your laws. And the people in there largely live within the M25, so they don't know what it's like to be a kid growing up in Collyhurst. They've no idea at all. And they're riddled with vested interests. That is our political system. It's the one I decided to leave. And the question you've got to ask is, what do you get when you have that over-centralised, antiquated, London-centric political system? You get Carillion. You get Hillsborough. You get a culture where sexual harassment seemingly is commonplace. You get phone hacking. You get a situation where large parts of the media are in the hands of one person. I think you also, though, get Brexit from a system like that. When you have a London-centric political system that doesn't treat all parts of the country equally, you are bound then to get resentment coming through and expressing itself as it did at the referendum. So, yes, we have a broken political system. I believe that. And this is now leading to two impulses, which I think won't necessarily take us towards an answer. One of the impulses that we see is for people to go to the extremes of politics. So to vote in the old system, but to vote for people on the extremes, particularly on the right of politics. That, for me, is the worst of all worlds. Because in that system, where you have power concentrated in too few hands, you put people with extreme views in at the top of it. And we see that, of course, in the United States. So that's not the answer, I don't think, to go to the extremes. The second impulse is also to try and sweep it all away, to kind of tear it all down. Somebody gave a talk at TEDx in Birmingham recently, where he called for liquid democracy, a kind of system in local government where there would be no party whips, no parties, no structures, and it would be a kind of mass rising of the people. I can see why that might be attractive, but I don't think it's the answer either. Because again, in an age when extremism is on the rise, you can't allow that kind of approach where people can be voted in without anybody really knowing what their motives are. So what is the answer then? And this brings me to the kind of crux of my talk to you today. I think here in Manchester, in Greater Manchester, we have got the beginnings of an answer to these turbulent times in which we live. The answer doesn't lie in going to the extremes. and giving power to the extremes. The answer lies in putting power down, maximum devolution of power out of Westminster, much closer to people, where people are, so that you can begin to open up power to people. The answer, I would say, is being true to the Manchester tradition, that tradition of pragmatic radicalism that we've seen through the centuries, where you don't just tear everything down. What you do is you open up the structures to people. That was the purpose of the trade union movement, founded here 150 years ago this year. That was also the purpose of the suffragette movement. Let people have access to the power, to the levers that make change. And that has always been the Manchester spirit. And it's what we're trying to build here, where politicians don't dictate. I don't sit there and say, this is how everything must be. The role of the politician, I would say, in a new, healthier political system should be to facilitate, to invite people in, and to write our policies with people, not do to people, do it together. So let me give you 3 examples of how we are trying to do that here in Greater Manchester. First, I have said I want this to be the UK's leading digital city. So I called people together and said, write a plan with me for how we do that. And we've begun to do that. And what's come through is an amazing vision of a digital city with a difference. Not just where we're kind of putting the tech in the ground and giving support to businesses, but a digital city with a difference that connects people together, that connects people to opportunity, that uses new technology to tackle homelessness and loneliness amongst older people. What a great vision, and that is our vision going forward. Let me give you a second example of how we're trying to build a new politics here in Greater Manchester. Next month, I'm calling a Green Summit, where we will invite people to come, not to hear what I think should be done and say everything that we think, the leaders and the councils of Greater Manchester, that's what we want. It's actually to have an open debate about whether Greater Manchester should become the UK's leading city when it comes to carbon neutrality. I'm going to ask people, should we set a new date for carbon neutrality? And if so, what should that date be? And what ideas can you bring to me if we do set that new date? What ideas can you bring to me to help us achieve it together? That, I would say, is a new type of politics, a new way of doing things. And let me just give you a third example. And it relates to the most urgent problem that is before our eyes, that you will have seen on your walk here this morning. And it's the challenge of rough sleeping and homelessness. I mentioned a few moments ago, didn't I, about how our political system hasn't protected people in this global world. And the most visible expression of that is the number of people huddled in the doorways of our towns and our cities. We are living in an era where we have a lethal combination of insecure work, with people not knowing how many hours they're going to work from one week to the next, and insecure housing, where we've got unregulated private landlords. People are living life now closer to the edge because of that. Insecure work, insecure housing. And the safety net that used to be there amongst all people and all communities has got big holes in it thanks to austerity. So people are falling over the edge, and then they're falling through, and they're ending up in those doorways. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? We can't just keep walking past. Manchester is saying to me, you must do something about it, and rightly so. So next week, we're gathering our Homelessness Action Network. This is an informal network of anybody in this city working to support people who are homeless. And we're going to say to them, let's get a single plan that we can get the whole city behind. That's what we're going to try and agree on Thursday. One plan to meet our ambition of ending rough sleeping here by 2020. And the way we're going to do it is not the old way of politicians producing strategies and throwing public money. The way we're going to do it is maximise the contribution of all sectors, public, private, community, voluntary, faith. Bring everybody together behind one plan. Let's see if we can build a movement, and let's see if we can do it together. That, for me, is a better way of doing politics. It's a healthier way. And that's what we're trying to build here in Greater Manchester. I'm going to end my talk today with just a quote, which I think starts to summarise where I'm coming from and everything I've just said. It's a quote from somebody called Wellington Webb, who was the mayor of Denver in the US. He said, "The 19th century was the century of empire. The 20th century, the century of national government. The 21st will be the century of cities." I think he is right. And I think we are at the forefront of that change here in Greater Manchester. It may sound a little arrogant to make this prediction, but I'm going to do it anyway. I believe in the next decade in this country, more social change for the better is going to come by people taking inspiration from what's about to happen here, rather than from direction in the old way from Westminster in an Act of Parliament. That is my prediction. And for those of you who hear that and maybe are still a bit cynical about it, I would say this to you. It was your great-grandmothers that won people the vote. It was your great-great-grandfathers who founded the trade union movement. You, Manchester, have changed the world before. Why on earth can't we go out there and do so again? Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Thank you. Have a great day.